We're Chad and Bridget Gilding from Madison, Wisconsin. We own an executive territory, which we opened with a standard and then expanded about a year later.
So I was a product engineer for 15 years at 2 different companies. I was always an engineer. I went to college for an engineer, but I never really liked it.
And I was an allocation manager with Famous Footwear at the corporate office in Madison. And then I was there about 8 years, and then they announced they were going to consolidate offices and move everyone to St. Louis. So we grew up in the area that we live in, and all our parents are there, and didn't want to take the kids away from grandparents, so we decided we weren't going to move. So that's kind of where, and I remember kind of in this whole process, Chad saying, when he started looking into different businesses, I remember him saying, I cannot retire being an engineer. Like, I cannot do this until retirement. I have to find something else. So that kind of kick-started it. And then my job leaving was kind of like perfect. It just worked out perfect. So
I didn't start at the same time as Bridget. I kept my job for 2.5 years. I actually was the one looking for a franchise. When we started, I searched on my own a little bit, and that was going nowhere. I would always find a problem with the company or just wasn't a good fit. So I filled out an online form for a franchise consultant, was Franchoice, and that put us in touch with Dick Bissell. And that kind of got it rolling. At the same time, Bridget's company, Famous Footwear, shut down in Madison. So she was out of work. So it kind of changed our plans. I was the one that was originally gonna start the franchise, but Bridget ended up doing it because of that. But anyway, Franchoice brought us 4 choices, and Fish was the one that ended up winning out of the 4.
When we were doing all our research, we had little kids. I mean, I think our youngest was 2. We had a 2, 4, and 6-year-old at the time. And so, we could only talk to them, the both of us together, when they were in bed. So I remember Chad said, okay, we have a scheduled call with Franchoice, and they're going to shoot some options, out for us. And so we scheduled it after they went to bed. And I remember we sat down at the kitchen table, across from each other. We both had a phone, and we were both, taking notes and listening to the options. And I remember they, gave us a few different options, and then one of them, next one they came to was fish window cleaning. And I remember pulling the phone away from my ear so they couldn't hear me, and I was like, no way. And then, we kind of chuckled and wrote down some notes, and we hung up, and I was like, yeah, I'm ruling out this one right away. I'm not doing window cleaning, because I knew I was going to start it, and that did not seem like anything that I wanted to do. No interest. So the only reason we kept it on is because Chad seemed to like kind of the business model. And then we just started to kind of dig, into the details more. So, and then I kind of started coming around to liking it also. So yeah, in the beginning I was not having it.
We started doing the validation process, and right away 2 stood out. So it was Fish and another company, and the more we went through it, we realized the business model just fit better. It was, number one, it was days, no nights and weekends, and the other one had a little bit of that. But the residual income you get, once you have a customer, you kind of keep that customer. You don't have to go out and get brand new customers to backfill the ones that you've lost when you finished the last job with the other company. So it was the residual income and the fact that you could go out and get new customers whenever you wanted. The other companies relied heavily on marketing, expensive marketing, so you would mail out the marketing, and the plan was you'd wait for the phone to ring. With Fish, you could go get business from day one, and I figured she'd be a great salesperson anyway.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that I loved about it, because we were really nervous. I mean, I was like so scared to do something on our own. So I was really afraid to take the risk, and one of the things I loved about Fish was exactly that. Like, I remember telling Chad, at least if I'm sitting in the office and I feel like we're struggling, I can get up and go out and do something about it. Whereas other companies, it was like, you send out all this marketing and you just cross your fingers and wait. And I didn't love that part of it. So I think that was kind of huge. in the decision making. So we opened in December of 2008. What I felt like was a terrible time to open because everyone was off. Every time I went to bid anyone, I called Chad. He was still working at the time, and so I remember calling him and being like, there's nobody at these places. They're all on vacation. It's Christmas. But it was cold, and I remember when I got back from training, I hired 2 people right away. Just 2 cleaners. We had no business. We had not one single job. But they were willing to go out and sell with me, so that's what we did every day. I took them and myself, and I trained them how to sell, and we'd go out in an area in the same car, and we would all split up until we covered the area, and we'd get back in the car and move on. So I think that was great for our open because I think it got us off to a really fast start. And so even though it was very, very cold and we were walking through snowdrifts upon snowdrifts, bidding buildings, we really tried not to skip a single thing, really tried to do what corporate kind of trained us to do. When I came back from training, I hired 2 cleaners, and they went out selling with me, so we didn't have any work at the time. So I just used them as salespeople in the beginning, and eventually, slowly, they would sell part-time, clean part-time. I mean, until we got enough work for them just to clean. I mean, there were days where I didn't have work for them, and they would go out and hang door hangers in neighborhoods. I mean, it was like I never just gave them off. I was like, here, this is what you're doing today. And some days they weren't thrilled about it, but they still went out and they just did it. So that, slowly we ramped up, and they were just full-time cleaners. And it got to be, I don't even know, maybe a year in that I didn't really feel like I needed an ops manager yet. So I had one of my cleaners become just a lead cleaner. So he did all of my training. So he just took a lot of that kind of stuff away from me. And maybe it was like 6 months in, I can't really remember the timing, but it got to the point after a couple years where it was too much, for me to do on my own. So it was either Chad was gonna have to quit and join, which was our plan originally anyways. And then it was either that or I was gonna have to hire some more people to help me. So about 2.5 years in.
She grew it enough in 2.5 years to make it financially make sense for me to leave my job as an engineer and join on, rather than hiring an ops manager and kind of going manager way there. I kind of filled that role. I didn't clean, but I did the office stuff. But after 2.5 years, we were able to make the jump from me having an engineering job to support the family while she grows the business from the start to we were able to support ourselves on the business. So it was a good time for the transition.
Yep, and kind of it was a great feeling because it's kind of what we set out to do, but I never really knew if it was actually going to work.
Not that quickly.
So after 2.5 years to be finally saying, like, maybe you should quit because I need help, so I can't do it by myself. And I think that was probably a great time for you too, because he had been waiting to do something else for a long time. So to finally reach that point was awesome.
I was excited, yes. We have 7 cleaners. We have a really good group of guys that have been with us, all of them except for one, for
years.
Three years. Dan's been with us
since we almost opened.
Since March of the first year, May of the first year. Wayne's been with us like 9 years. So we have a real solid group. They show up every day. They do everything that they're given. So the window cleaner portion of the employee part is awesome.
I mean, we do struggle with it sometimes. I mean, I'm sure everybody will say that. I mean, we have a really great core, so we're really lucky to have that. But, when we get busy, we'll hire up a couple more. And we're always, and I think we'll never get away from it, we're always going to have those 1 or 2 people who flake out on us, who don't show up, who just end up going away. I mean, that's going to happen in any business. And that, I think, can be really stressful. And I think there were times in the business where we didn't have such a solid core, maybe a couple, where it would be stressful hiring and then having them leave or doing interviews and not liking anybody. So I think we're lucky in that aspect, but I think that's just how it is for everybody. You're always going to have employees that you don't love, a few of them, and they're going to come and go.
It's a numbers game. It's like writing estimates. You go through a certain number of employees and you're going to find the right guys. And I think right now, I would say in almost 10 years, we have the best group of guys we've had since the beginning.
I think it's helpful to have the cleaners that have been there a long time, because once the new ones start, they can give them all the positive, how much money they're making and that they get holidays off and they don't have to work nights and weekends. I mean, they can kind of tell all those things. And I think that's probably helpful. Well, we don't have an ops manager, and we do not have a salesperson right now, even though we probably should have a salesperson, maybe not necessarily an ops manager. We have 2 lead cleaners, so they do all our training, and they pretty much handle it while we're gone, when we're away.
Failure wasn't an option. This was it. We went into it knowing this has to work. So with failure not being an option and following the system, she was able to grow it really fast. I think if anyone goes in with that attitude, it'll work.
I think you just have to work hard. You have to put in the time and the hours and do exactly what they trained you to do at training. Because if you come back and you slack on any part of it, it may work. It just might be a slower start. But if you come out and just get out there selling, that is probably the biggest thing, is just get out selling right away.
And do it yourself.
It will, and do it yourself. And it will help you, have a fast start, which then just makes you feel so great and it makes you want to just keep going.
Takes a lot of the pressure off.
Yeah, it does. It makes you realize that it works. This works, and then you just want to keep going and going and going and going. So I think that, when you first come back from training, I think the first couple weeks are a little bit like, what am I doing? Because, you're just starting. So if you can just get back, get yourself situated within like a day and get out there right away. Don't give yourself a week. Don't give yourself 2 weeks to just try and figure things out in your office. Literally, first day, go out and start selling. And you will see the jobs start rolling in. So
there's a common theme with the people that are successful in fish. Number one, they follow the system. You spent the money on the system, follow the system. It's pretty simple. And the other thing is drive. You can tell when you talk to someone whether they're kind of a driven person and just how they talk about the company. And the people we talked to were really positive about fish, but you could tell it was them that did it too. It wasn't just fish.
I feel like the system can work for anybody. I feel like if you go through training and go back to your office and just implement what you learned, it will work. But if you go back and just sit in your office and spend lots of hours doing office stuff that you probably don't need to do yet because you just opened, so how much office stuff do you really have? It's just easier to sit in your office. But if you can get back and make sure that you go out and follow the system that they trained you on, you will be successful. And when I started, we had 3 little kids, 2, 4, and 6 at the time, and I was about to cut back my hours at my other job before we found out that it was relocating the office to St. Louis. And so I went from about to cut back to working 40 hours a week. But I knew I wanted this to work, and I just think it does take a lot of hard work in the beginning. But you have to be willing to put in the time, and you have to be willing to do exactly as they trained you to do to make it successful. And I think that's what got us off to a great start in the beginning, was just following everything.
We work less hours than we used to.
We probably put in combo 40 to 60 depending on the time of year. I would say winter, way less. We're not as busy. But spring and fall, there are days where he's literally almost writing estimates all day long, day after day after day just to keep up. So,
but we don't work Fridays, even in the spring and fall.
Yeah.
We don't go to the office on Fridays. So.
No, we have our 2 lead cleaners that cover for us when we're gone. So I started not working Fridays before you started. And I don't know why. I don't even remember what made me not work Fridays. I probably took a Friday off and then said I never want to work that again. And then when he started, he was going to start working Fridays. And I was like, wait, hold on. We don't work Fridays. So we just don't, unless we're so busy that we have to go in.
Every once in a while, I'll write a few estimates on a Friday. But
Yeah.
I have nightmares of having to go back and do a product engineering job again. But the 8 to 5, 5 days a week of,
I think that's the
scary.
best part about this is the freedom it has given us, because with our 3 kids at the time back when we opened, they weren't in sports, they were little. They, after school, would bus home to my mom's house and, she would watch them. So that made that a lot easier. But now they're, 10 years later, they're 11, 14, and 15 now. And we're running all the time with them. So we always have sports, we always have school stuff. And the freedom that it allows us now to just step away when we want to for a school thing or a basketball tournament or whatever we have is the best. And I always say to Chad, can you imagine if we were still working 8 to 5? How would we do this? How do we get our kids here? How would we make the soccer game? How would we do any of this? And right now it's summer and I'm pretty much home all the time with the kids. I probably work 10 hours a week. But we're a little slower these couple months, so it works out. But I would never be able to do this if I had an 8 to 5 job. So I think that's probably been the most rewarding thing for both of us. Yeah, 100%. We would do it again. I just think it's been a positive experience all around. It's the best thing I think that we've ever chosen to do. Of course, there are stressful times and there are stressful moments. And I'm sure there are times in the office where he's like, could you just go home? I actually prefer when you're not here so many hours. But it's been the best thing for our family. I just always think of our kids when they get older and how they'll be able to say, gosh, my mom and dad went to everything. They didn't miss any of our stuff.
I don't even think they realize how lucky they are.
Yes. But they will someday. When they get older.
Yeah.
Yes, hopefully.
And they're even here with us here today. So I don't think they realize how lucky they are that we're able to do the stuff for them, especially in the summer, and then even school stuff, after school stuff that other families have to make a choice. One or the other spouse has to go, or neither of them go, just because it's not possible. And it's been the best thing that we could have run into. I'm glad we made it through the validation process and we chose this one.
And I'm glad that he talked me into even looking more into window cleaning because I would have been out 10 years ago.
I still do all the warm leads, and I think we get a much higher percentage of those as far as goes because they've met the person that owns the company. A lot of homeowners especially, will ask you if you're the owner of the company, and I think it's a huge plus. So with their model and the owner being the one that gets it started, I think it really helps that you're the one that's doing it. It's not a salesperson. It's not a cleaner on their own. We use cleaners, but she was always there with them. So
yeah, and I think, when you go out, I remember thinking this at training too, when you go out and write an estimate, like how many people are really going to want an estimate? But really, it's pretty easy. I found that when you go out and give them an estimate, it's free, and most of the time they're willing to accept it. And a lot of the times, I think they think it's going to be more expensive than it really is. And I would have, even buildings call and be surprised thinking we've never thought about window cleaning before, but we always thought it would be too pricey for us. So I think that was a surprise for people too, and kind of a surprise for me too, that, people were so willing to accept the estimates and were surprised about the cost of it.